Good morning. I'm Jill Paperno, and I am the current Monroe County Bar Association president. And today it is my honor to interview one of our past presidents, Diane Cecero. So Diane, let me start out by asking you, what type of law you practice?
Well, currently, Jill, I'm retired, not practicing law other than doing volunteer work for VLSP.
And what kind of volunteer work do you do with VLSP?
I'm doing the immigration law clinics for them, getting families prepared for in the unfortunate event they may face some legal action, deporting them from the country or detaining them.
Mm-hmm. And what type of law were you practicing at the time that you were the Monroe County Bar Association president?
I was general counsel at Monroe Community College for 19 years. And I think I was in my 17th or 18th year then. And as I recall, I think I was the first bar president that had a role of in-house counsel. Everyone else had come from law firms before that time, or the court system.
And switching topics for a second, how did you first become involved with the Monroe County Bar Association?
When I came to Rochester in 1978, I realized that I was a joiner. So I joined the Bar Association and got involved right away. One of the first things I took on was volunteering with the Young Lawyers section. And I became a mock trial judge for two first place teams. First, the St. Agnes School, which was an all girls school, and then Jefferson High School, which was an inner city school. And both those experiences were great opportunities for me to get involved in the bar. And then led to me being chair of the Young Lawyers section early in my career, I think 1983 or so.
And when you were chair of the Young Lawyers section, what did the section involve at that time?
Well, one of the things I involved was running the mock trial. Mm-hmm. And putting on CLEs for young lawyers and creating sort of a social network for us. Also early on, Bob Feldman, the late Bob Feldman, was president of the bar, and he asked me to get involved by joining the first board of Volunteer Legal Services Project. So I think he picked me because I was chair of Young Lawyers at the time.
Did you stay in touch with some of those people that you knew from Young Lawyers throughout your time with the Bar Association?
Oh, absolutely. You know, lawyers are some of my closest friends, and most of them are the people that were my colleagues from the late 70s and early 80s.
What year did you become president of the Bar Association?
2013.
And when you were president of the Bar Association, did the board have a particular focus that year?
Well, we had just adopted a strategic vision. I'm not sure it was a strategic plan, but it was the strategic vision. And I'm going to quote it: to be indispensable to our members and the justice system through the delivery of cutting-edge legal services essential to our success. So I would say that was what was in front of me as I helped plan the year. But as you know, as president, you never know what your year is going to hold.
That's true. Yeah, in a pandemic year, the Bar Association has taken on a different role, and it's certainly something that we never could have anticipated at the time.
Right.
During the time that you were bar president and having that strategic vision, what were some of the highlights of your year?
Well, one of the things that was central to our year was that it was the 50th anniversary of Gideon versus Wainwright. So we were involved really in a national effort to look at access to legal services for the indigent accused. And during that time, as you well remember, I became involved with lawyers who participated in criminal defense work. And that was an opening for me that I hadn't ever embraced. Getting to know you, John Getz, Paul McCauley, Chuck Nosey, among others, who came and helped me understand the needs of the indigent accused. And we worked to come up with some ways to help enhance their access to justice, I guess I would say.
Yeah,
That was,
sorry, go on.
no, that was something that was unanticipated for me, and a real welcoming experience.
One of the things I've found through bar membership and the presidency is the exposure to different kinds of law and different lawyers practicing in other areas. And it's been a very enjoyable and rewarding part of the experience.
I agree, totally.
So were there any events or issues that took you by surprise during your year?
Oh, probably. Actually, Mary Lowenguth encouraged me, and it was sort of a fun thing to do. We created a happy hour for lawyers in 2014, the second half of my bar year. It was called Bar Stop, and we all met on Thursday afternoons at the former Hyatt Hotel. So that was a way to meet new people, which was great, and to hang out with bar junkies. You know, there is a group of people that always follow bar activities. So that was really fun. The other thing we worked on, there was an emerging concern, which I know you've shown leadership on, was mental health issues for lawyers. And at the time, we had a wonderful committee called Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers. And we approached them about increasing their mission to include mental health. And there was a very strong reluctance to do that. They felt that really they were a committed group of people dealing with alcohol abuse and to a lesser extent substance abuse, but they didn't feel they were prepared to get into the mental health area. So we began exploring that issue, and then under Steve Modica, who was immediately following me, the bar really grabbed that issue and moved forward. And in the 5 or 6 years since, that's become a real focus.
I think that's been an incredibly important part of what we do as a bar association, and especially this year when people have been feeling so isolated and have felt real extreme challenges with running their practices or working during the course of the pandemic. So that particular program has been a real blessing.
I agree.
So some people don't know that when you're bar president, you start out as the president-elect, and then you become the bar president, and then you're the immediate past president. So it's really kind of a 3-year gig.
For sure.
When you were done with your year as immediate past president, did you remain active with the bar, or did you take a little break?
I took a little break, and that was a sort of a welcome. That was a welcome break, and then it wasn't intentional, but it ended up coinciding with my change in employment status. So really, I haven't been as active since then as I had been for the first 40 years of my career.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to switch gears again now. What was it like for you to practice law as a woman in your field when you started?
Well, so I started practicing in 1978, and I was a litigator. And there were very few women litigators in the late 70s and early 80s. But the few of us that were, including Judge Deborah Martin, would be one of my colleagues at the same time, we found our own little group. You know, we would go to special term and sit next to each other. And the late Beth McDonald was another one. So we had to bond together to make our presence known, I think. Mm-hmm. I think we always felt a little that we were questioned, that people really didn't believe that we could be credible litigators. But the 3 or 4 that I can think of right now who started when I did really stayed with it and rose to the top of their fields. There was a credibility gap, I guess, is what I would say. But we got through it.
Yeah, it sounds like several of you were real trailblazers and kind of led the way for many others of us who followed. And I didn't follow that far behind, but I know there were challenges at that time that I had started out too.
Well, certainly in the field of criminal defense, which you practice in, you had to be pretty much alone in that field at the time.
There were not that many women defense attorneys at the time. and it had its challenges. There was one judge who, when I was in town courts, would hug me as I walked up to the bench.
Oh,
So
yeah. Plenty of hugs.
So when you became bar president, what was it like to be a woman in that role? Did you sense any difference from the way that men handled the role, or people reacted to men as they were in that role?
That's a good question. I followed Connie Walker as bar president, and I think we were the first combination of women in the one succeeding each other. I was very seasoned in my career by that time, 35 years. So I really don't think I had a credibility gap as bar president at that time. I think there's always an issue of style. And my style was to be as inclusive and welcoming as I could possibly be, and to get to use the year to celebrate the accomplishments of fellow lawyers, men and women lawyers who were doing interesting things for the community and for the bar.
And do you have any recollections of incidents or events that you experienced as an attorney or as a bar president that reflect the different ways that women were treated at the times?
Well, if I go back to the very early days of my career, what I would call water cooler conversation. If a woman had a water cooler conversation with the men in the firm or in the office, I think it always made them think of us differently. They always used it as an opportunity to think of us as little girls, young girls, whereas they could talk about golf or football or and then as a young mother, I became the mother to two children early in my career, one in 1984 and one in 1985. I think always there was a concern that I wasn't going to be credible and prepared. When I was pregnant with my daughter in 1984, I was an assistant attorney general, and I was handling some very big cases civil cases for the office. And there was a man who came in from New York City for a deposition, and I was probably 8 months pregnant. And he wanted to smoke a cigar in the AG's office. And I asked him, I was obviously pregnant. I asked him not to smoke the cigar, which nobody was allowed to smoke anyway. And he just looked at me and he said he thought he could call the attorney general and ask for permission to smoke a cigar. And I said, I'll call the attorney general for you and tell, So I think that was sort of his bluster about me. And then I had my child, and I had a very big case pending in Rochester, but it involved a quadriplegic young man who was injured at the State University of New York at Brockport, and he was from Long Island. And so the plaintiff's attorney made a motion to move the case to Long Island, and I didn't want to give up the case, and so I agreed to move the case to Long Island, and really took a 2-week hiatus from my newborn daughter to go try that case in Long Island. And I think part of that was his strategy to get me off the case.
So it sounds like it was actually a weird kind of compliment if he wanted you off the case that badly.
I think it was, yeah. I ended up prevailing, getting a defense verdict in a very, very important case at the time. So I suspect that some of that both of those things had to do with me being not just a woman, but a young woman.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any advice for younger women attorneys at this point?
Well, I love to give advice, Jill. I think stick with it, make friends, organize yourself with people like you. My daughter used to say that I was a member of a support group for mothers of boys who played basketball, women who had aging parents. Find your group. Find the group of people that will support you professionally and personally.
Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap this interview up?
Oh, I think it's wonderful you're celebrating Women's History Month. It's sort of cool to be part of Women's History of the Bar Association.
Yes.
So thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really glad you joined us. Diane Cecero on March 15th. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Jill.